Shalom. So we're talking about the Sheva Mitzvot, and everybody knows that God made this covenant with all of humanity before the covenant of the 613 commandments with Israel, that there are 7 universal laws that apply to all of humanity. And one of the things that we learn is that these 7 laws are not so simple. They have many, many details, and we're going to be discussing the various applications and the various permutations and the various ramifications of these laws in everyday life. And even laws like blasphemy and laws like idolatry that might seem to some to be of a bygone era, actually there are many manifestations in our current generation, in contemporary society, and those that are sensitive and that want to be careful in every aspect of their lives to make sure that they don't, God forbid, touch upon in their conduct any transgression of these things. They have some very interesting questions. Some of you that are watching, there are many inquiries that people have regarding everyday situations that they realize that, well, this might actually smack of some sort of situation of idolatry. So those are all things that have to be discussed. The basic 7 and the many different examples of how they actually are manifest in the world today. But what it comes out to, actually, when we begin to delve into this topic in the spirit of Torah and in the spirit of sincere Torah study, in the Jewish manner of really wanting to make sure that in every fiber of our being we are fulfilling the ratzon, the will of God, we begin to discover that these 7 laws have so many different maybe layers of application and meaning, so that even the most minimalistic opinions amongst the sages as to what the barest obligations are for the Noahides might reveal that there are actually tens of laws that kind of emanate from the basic outline of the 7. And this is a topic unto itself. I want to go further, though, for the moment and explore the idea of, well, how many mitzvot really are there available for a non-Jew to perform? One of the things that we begin to understand when we delve into the sources and the process of the transmission of Torah and the clarifications of the sages throughout the generations, we begin to understand that the concept of the covenant of the 7 universal laws is a kind of a minimalistic, basic set of requirements for the bedrock of society for a healthy, functioning world. In other words, put it simply, God has billions of people in this world. He doesn't expect from the entire world to aspire to the highest level. He does encourage it, but he does have a minimal standard by which the earthly court is authorized to carry out punishments for those that transgress. And so looking at it from that point of view, the basic 7 laws are the absolute bottom line of what a normal, healthy, functioning society should consist of. However, we find a thread throughout the Torah, and by the Torah here, of course, I mean the entire body of the tradition of our sages. We find an idea that the non-Jewish world is firmly entrenched in the Torah, and that well nigh the entire body, practically, of the mitzvot is something that non-Jews also can relate to. What do we mean by this? If we are taught, and indeed as Jews we believe, I hope, that the Torah is literally the blueprint of creation, that the Torah is the physical manifestation, as it were, of Hashem's will in this world, and that the most beautiful definition of the mitzvot, that this is advice, these are conduits through which we can bring a level of blessing into the world. We can bind ourselves, as it were, to the side of good in the world, to positivity, and we can actually elevate human existence to a level of divine purpose. That's what the mitzvot are all about. Well, all of creation and all of the nations and every living soul is firmly implanted in the Torah and rooted there. So the idea being that these 7 laws are, again, a very basic and minimal requirement for everyone, no matter what, even if they're not really interested or not really wanting to aspire to any sort of state of coming to work on themselves towards perfection. But this is what they must do. But then the Torah itself, as the beacon of life on earth, the Torah still beckons to the whole world to come closer. And that's really the beauty of Torah study. And that's the beauty of discovering that the mitzvot themselves, coupled with the Torah study, are an expression of a soul wanting to come closer to Hashem and wanting that to be manifest in the way we conduct ourselves every day. So we have these opinions amongst the sages, and as we continue, we're going to be more specific and study together some more details, because there are many details. But for now, generally speaking, we have these opinions that actually, while the 7 laws are the basic requirement, non-Jews essentially have the right to accept upon themselves additional laws as well. Now, we can understand that pretty easily, because after all, when we look at something like the sacred cycle of the divine holidays, or what I like to call the cycle of the divinely appointed seasons, and this is something that we're going to be going into in detail, the Hebrew calendar, the message of every single holiday for everyone, because again, the Torah is a very universal thing. It's the expression of God's will, and you know, there are some Jewish people who have a very myopic worldview of the Torah, and they'll say, "Oh, this is our thing, you know. This is not for the non-Jews. This is like, what do they have to do with this? This is ours." I think that's an insult to the Torah. I think that's a tremendous minimalization of godliness, you know, for them to think that it's just something that He meant to limit for us. It's not like that at all. So we take, for example, something like the sacred cycle of the calendar, when we realize that in every one of these divinely appointed seasons, which are literally rendezvous with our destiny, which are literally, each holiday has a tremendous message for all of humanity. If we take something that's readily understood and well known, like the theme of Passover, right? The theme of Passover being freedom on a universal level, being the ability of every person to escape from the constraints of Mitzrayim, which is the narrow place inside each one of us, and for us to come to a place of being truly free, which means that we make ourselves willfully subservient only to God and away from all the pharaohs in our lives, right? So obviously that has a message for all people as well. And even the concept of Shabbat every week does have a universal theme. And so even though it's kind of a well-worn idea that people have, well, the non-Jews are not supposed to keep Shabbat, that may not be entirely true. There may be an aspect of Shabbat which the non-Jewish world, those who want to embrace the God of Israel, certainly should avail themselves of. And this is a separate topic that we're going to talk about, Shabbat and the Noahides. But what I want to say now is, there is an idea that just about, and I'm going to say again, practically, well nigh, all of the mitzvot of the Torah have a universal theme and a universal application. And the question that we're going to explore together is, how should those mitzvot, which are the commandments that are not included in the basic 7, but the other mitzvot from the body of the 613, if a non-Jew wants to voluntarily take them upon himself, how should he observe them? Because he cannot observe them in the exact same manner in which Israel would be observing them. He cannot, make it seem as if he is Jewish. He cannot purport to be Jewish. It's not enough for him just to keep the commandment if he's not Jewish. But yet, at the same time, there is intrinsically, in the very essence of the mitzvah, something calling out to him. And this is if he feels that way, and if you feel this way, this is only natural, this is wonderful, and this is healthy, because it is for you. it is for you. The question that is being clarified by the rabbis today, and this is a beautiful phenomena, that we are in a position today where there is such an outpouring of desire and such a spiritual revolution that there are so many non-Jews that are coming to the Torah. The questions are being clarified. How should these mitzvot be observed in a way that would be applicable and proper and fitting for non-Jewish observance, and in a way that makes a clear distinction and separation from Israel, because we cannot have a situation, we cannot afford to have a situation of confusion and of some sort of mixture of everybody together. But yet at the same time, these mitzvot can be fulfilled in a manner that is proper for the non-Jews. So some of the more readily accessible examples that come to mind immediately. We have many questions that are posed all the time from righteous Gentiles who want to feel that they're keeping Hashem's word and being within His will. So they want to know, can we wear tzitzit? Should we keep our heads covered? Can we have a mezuzah on our home? Should we light Hanukkah candles in the window like the Jewish people do? Can I make a sukkah? Can I have a Passover Seder? Those are some questions which require immediate answers, because they are questions that deal with something that's very visible and very tangible. So we need to know, before we go jumping into everything all together, we need to know how the lines of demarcation are drawn to ensure that there is no confusion. But then we have some questions that are of a more personal nature, that maybe is going on within the realm of the privacy of an individual, that are no less earth-shattering in their importance, such as, what is the relationship of the non-Jewish world to the laws of kashrut? Is there an idea that even though a ben Noach is only commanded not to partake of the limb of a living animal, is there also an idea that perhaps because God makes it clear that Israel is to refrain from many other things, that, well, maybe these are things that are not pleasing to Him, and that maybe even we as non-Jews should accept upon ourselves? And what about the concept of the Shabbat, which we know is an intimate sign and a very personal thing between Israel and God, but still, is there something there for the non-Jewish world as well? I think that we'll be surprised by the answers to many of these questions, and the further that we delve into these subjects, the more that we'll see that we need to have a lot of clarity here. There are going to be a lot of questions and a lot of different opinions, so we're going to take it slow, and hopefully with God's help we're going to come to a working conclusion on many of these topics, again, for the purpose of everyone, Jew and Gentile, feeling that they are able to bring the light of Hashem into their lives, able to reflect that in our everyday contact, and able to have a covenant based on action, which is the basis of the entire Torah for all of us, Jews and Gentiles, that we are in an action-oriented world, and that we sanctify our lives and God in this world through our actions.